Okay, we should be live. We should be back. The world reeling with the super critical news that Damian Jones will be starting. Started quite a number of games earlier this year for the Golden State Warriors, but will return to the starting lineup this evening in Game 3 of the Western Conference Finals in Portland. I currently have him for 9 minutes. That being, again, what I think it averages out to. But I would say more often than not, he actually plays less than that. We'll talk about it a little more in a minute, but played 90 seconds in Game 2 in the middle of the end of the third, beginning of the fourth quarter. Went out there when the game was still really close and competitive. Didn't look good. Played his 90 seconds. Played, I believe, a little bit under 2 minutes of blowout run in Game 1. And previously to that, hadn't stepped on an NBA court in 7 months after tearing his pectoral muscle. So, FanDuel, where you can get much safer plays, which to me seem a lot more likely to have significant upside. I don't think he's really playable. DraftKings is 1,000. I guess it's probably your best 1,000 at this point. You can hope he plays well and gets 15 minutes. And if you have a lineup you really like that that he happens to fit into, but not really consequential news. While we get things up and going, I guess we will continue our history of reviewing last night. Last night's game was obviously a train wreck. Slates are kind of dicey when they're single game slates and the game blows out like yesterday's did. Toronto struggled early and often, went to the bench extra, so we still saw significant minutes out of Kawhi Leonard, of course, who was still in there for, I think he played 38 odd minutes. Kyle Lowry played, I think, a little more than him, closer to 39. But everyone else of the starters for that team had reduced minutes. Kawhi and Giannis were the only players to exceed 30 fantasy points. Bit of a shit show there. Both the centers, especially Marc Gasol, were remarkably bad. One of the worst games I've seen out of Marc Gasol in a while. Got the plug pulled on him mercifully after only 19 minutes or so. Shot 1 of 9, I think it was, to back up Game 1's, I think, 2 of 11. So a hot 3 for 20 from the field thus far in this series. Still like the opportunity. Obviously, in a close game like you saw in Game 1 where they feel they need him, you could get him out there for, I think he played 39 minutes and change in that game, and still obviously very cheap. I liked both the starting centers at their prices, and they were both extremely disappointing. Brook Lopez didn't look that great either. Pascal Siakam fouled out, so your best possible lineup ended up being Bledsoe. I'm positive ended up in there with a fairly tepid but remarkable from last night's standards, 25 fantasy points or some such. But it would have been Kawhi, Giannis, Bledsoe, probably a couple Toronto bench guys because they got increased run where you got 24, 25, 26 minutes out of Ibaka, Powell, VanVleet. Those guys got in the game quite a bit more because, again, they were getting pretty well schooled. Yeah. Bit of a shit show. Not sure what there is to take away or talk about there, really. Chris Middleton struggled again. That was to be expected. Talked about that a lot. I imagine Mirotic ended up in your best possible lineup. Lost a minute or two to the blowout. Still ended up with 22, 23 minutes. About a point a minute. And at his price, he was going to get in there. But bit of a shit show. So here we are, moving up to the Moda Center, Game 3 of the Western Conference Finals. So if you looked at the best possible lineups in Game 1 of the series, we'll use DraftKings as a standard, although it would have been the same on FanDuel. Game 1 of the series, Game 2 of the series, looking at the best possible showdown lineups, somewhat surprisingly, only 2 players were in both of them, and those players were Steph Curry and Draymond Green. In the first game, they were accompanied by, I pulled this up before, in the first game they were accompanied by Enes Kanter when he was back with his ridiculous $4,400 price tag, Rodney Hood, Klay Thompson, and Moe Harkless. In the second game, it was Steph and Draymond, but in this case you wanted Lillard and McCollum, Seth Curry, and Jordan Bell at $1,200, filling in the final spot there in that fun little shindig. So Damian Jones again. If you need to or want to play a $1,000 player on DraftKings, I think he's in play. On FanDuel, you're playing him, he's $500 less there at the minimum than Evan Turner, who at $6,500 is probably my favorite value play there on this slate. Going up to $7,000, $7,500, $8,000, you get players we expect to see 20 or 25 minutes. The only way you can intelligently play Damian Jones is if you think he gets extended time somehow. If you wanted arguments for that, one would be he didn't have a lower body injury, so hopefully conditioning isn't much of an issue. He can actually play the time, although that's not really relevant on this team. Andrew Bogut can play more than 3.5 minutes. The 7 players a game they're playing, or between 6 and 8 players a game they're playing between 90 seconds and 14 minutes. All those guys could play more than that time. And again, from the beginning of the series said, I think Steve Kerr opens up the lineup pretty significantly here because he thinks he can still win and do that and wants to save his guys some miles on the tires for the finals. And, he was very professional and gave the only answer he could when he was asked about it, which was like, well, different series or different matchups. That's bullshit. To beat Houston, you gotta run guys out there 40, 42, 43 minutes. You can still take down some games, at least at home, against Portland, playing some of your worst players a dozen minutes to ease off on the other guys. And the fact that, excepting Looney, who is probably objectively the best of them, none of them gets more than 10 minutes, proves that that's what he's doing. If there were better matchups, as he says, you would get 22 minutes of Quinn Cook, because he's just better, or 22 minutes of Jonas Jerebko, or 22 minutes of Damian Jones, because those are matchups that are better for them. But that's not what's happening remotely. He's just knows they're all bad in different ways, and so we're just going to spread out the time a little bit. So that's a load of bullshit. Not that I blame him at all for answering the question courteously, but the answer is, we think we can beat Portland only playing our starters 34 minutes apiece on average, as opposed to beat Houston, we had to run those guys out there like 40-plus minutes. Though in fairness, in that last game, which was close, you got 38 minutes and change of Steph and 41 minutes of Klay. But Draymond played 33, although that was somewhat of an abstract of foul trouble. He would have played more. But Iguodala stays down at, I think it's 30, 32, somewhere in that range. And so his 16 minutes get spread out, and they have a carousel of guys playing center. So those 48 minutes get spread out, averaging about a dozen minutes apiece between 4 different guys, where you get very little Draymond at the 5. We haven't seen that much of that. You're seeing some functional Jerebko at the 5. Looney obviously spending a lot of time at the 5. Damian Jones, Andrew Bogut, who got a shift each of the last 2 games. I won't pretend I know exactly what's going to happen here, because I just don't. I'm not sure Steve Kerr does. I'm pretty sure no one other than Steve Kerr does. But if you wanted to play Damian Jones, your logic has to be, on FanDuel especially, you have to think he's going to see 15, 20 minutes for some reason. And again, that would really surprise me. I don't think Jordan Bell has done anything to lose his role in the rotation. I still think he plays 12 to 15 minutes. I don't think Kevon Looney has done anything to lose his role in the rotation. I still think he plays 20 to 24 minutes, and there's just not that many minutes left. So, but anyhow, if you wanted to play him, your rationale would be either A, he's always been a favorite of Kerr's, which is true. The fact that he got in that last game during relevant time was very surprising to me, at least. But obviously started earlier this year over, I thought, either Looney, who they prefer to start at the 4 when Draymond is out for whatever reason, or Jordan Bell, or cash considerations, as he's known in Chicago. I thought would get that time, Damian Jones got those starts, and he's fine. I'm not saying he's a horrific basketball player, but your logic would be, again, wasn't a lower body injury. Steve Kerr likes him. I think he's going to get out there and play 15 minutes. If this news comes out at 10 minutes before lock, I'm a little more interested in it because I think you're getting him at 20% owned. But people, especially when it's not full basketball season and maybe they're not spending as much attention to the rotations, I think we end up with something like 20% owned Damian Jones tonight. I just don't have any interest at that point. Like 4% owned, sure, because there is a non-zero chance that he runs out there and somehow gets 15, 16 minutes. But there's a lot of reasons not to think he gets anything like that. And again, I currently have him at 9, and I think the under that number is more likely than the over. He's played 2 games in the last 7 months. He has yet to exceed 2 minutes. He's taking over for Andrew Bogut, who started each of the last 2 games, only played the very beginning of the first quarter in each of them, and played 7 minutes, followed by 3.5 minutes. So it would also represent a substantive change to the rotation to find 15 minutes somehow for Damian Jones. So, yeah, FanDuel, I just don't want it. And again, if you want to play him, that's fine, but you have to strongly disagree on my minutes take. You have to have seen a quote that I missed somehow, or something indicating you think he sees at least double-digit minutes. He's fine as a fantasy player. He's in that Kevon Looney range, a little worse from a points per minute standpoint than Jordan Bell as far as the ability to randomly spike a ceiling there. I think you have to consider it a net negative when you're looking at Bell or Looney or Bogut in theory, because again, there's just only so many center minutes to go around here. To that end, if you go back and look at Game 2, you got a very good game out of Looney, who at $5,400, especially on DraftKings, is still just fine to play. That price on FanDuel I have basically no interest in. Draymond was in significant foul trouble in that last game, so that led to him losing 4 or 5 minutes, those minutes going to Looney. So instead of Looney playing 22, 24, which tends to be his comfort zone, he ended up playing, I think, almost 29 minutes. Scored about how you would expect. A little better than average for him. He's going to come in at or under a fantasy point a minute most times, but this matchup is a pretty exceptional one. He got a little better than that. So I think he played 29.5 minutes, had 31 fantasy points. He did not miss a shot from the field. I think he was 6 for 6, 2 for 3 from the line. If you asked me to project Kevon Looney tonight, you're going to end up with something like 24 minutes, 23 fantasy points, which is fine. Absolutely nothing wrong with that, but there is in his wheelhouse, and you can game log it if you want. It's not that weird for him to play 21 minutes and get 14.5 fantasy points. And if his ownership stays, about where it's been, I'd probably rather come in under. It's fairly likely you just saw the best Kevon Looney game you're going to get this series. But I'm not, running away in the other direction. You end up with Kevon Looney, that's just fine. It is a 1-game slate. It does not take a lot for him to get there. So Enes Kanter's minutes fell off last game. That was to be expected. Again, set up for Game 1, set up for Game 2. It's a really bad matchup for him. The price really doesn't incentivize it at this point. I think enough people will play him because they don't look at the minutes total and still see the 40 in Game 1, and I generally really wouldn't be that interested in going there. Again, played 30 minutes or what have you in Game 1, played 19 in Game 2. I am for 17 today. It is worth pointing out, they really should, a couple things about this. So they really should run him when Steph is off the court. So he's a good offensive weapon. There are plenty of fine matchups for him down low. He can suck up some fouls, which kind of be an issue when you have Zach Collins needing to fill some time and a Golden State team that can load up some fouls on you. He can just, play his 15 minutes and take 4 fouls and just suck some time off the clock for you. But the biggest loss not having him there is the rebounding. They have, as expected, given up a lot on defense here, where they'll run lots of 3-guard lineups with Lillard and McCollum and Curry out there, Hood getting more time, Collins getting more time. The fact that Meyers Leonard cracked the rotation, played most of the fourth quarter, saw a total of, I think he played 17 minutes, indicates that defense is not a high priority at this point. And this iteration of the Warriors is actually a team you can go small against with relatively little penalty. The biggest reason teams generally don't go small is there are two reasons, and one is what I was about to say is the biggest problem with having Enes Kanter out there is the rebounding goes to shit. Enes Kanter is a world-class rebounder. One of the best 10 rebounders in the world. He's really, really, really good. Taking him out of there and replacing him with any of the guys. They had Moe Harkless playing center for a little while there. Zach Collins, Meyers Leonard. Any of those guys, you're giving up possessions because of rebounds. And that's the real loss. You like his ability to operate down low. He's got some great post moves. I'm a big Enes Kanter fan. But your big issue is, you're giving up a half dozen possessions a quarter because he's not pulling down rebounds he would otherwise get. And that's the real issue going small is one, rebounding is a big issue, but two, you just get some really, really tough matchups, and this isn't currently a Warriors lineup that makes that a huge issue. Kevon Looney, Andrew Bogut, Damian Jones, none of those guys massive offensive presences where you need the big body on them or they're going to go full, Andre Drummond 30-20 on you or something like that. Draymond Green does not do as much. He may do a little more bully ball today, and the more you guard him with, the biggest guy in the court is Moe Harkless or Evan Turner or whatever, you could definitely pick up some more of that. It's not the first thing you're worried about. You're worried about his distribution, and again, it's more of a defensive quantity than a positive one. And when you get Kevin Durant out of there and replace him with Andre Iguodala, it's a lot more possible to have Seth Curry spending, 20 minutes playing the three. So, it made sense. And also, they defensively weren't going to be good regardless. So they're going from being defensively bad to being defensively just terrible, which is a real relevant thing when you look at Steph and Clay and the whole rest of this team. And again, I'm starting my lineups with Steph and Clay. Clay did not get there in Game 2. He was not in the best possible lineup. He can kill you. He had 30, 32 fantasy points, something like that. But there was just a ton of opportunity there. Didn't happen to make many of his shots in that game. I think he was 8 for 22. I think in Game 1, Steph had 24 shots. Clay had 20. In Game 2, they each had 22. So they're both averaging 22 shots a game. Draymond's averaging 10 to get within close to that. I think Iguodala took 3 and then 6. And then obviously some guys off the bench, are taking 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 shots. Bogut started and took, I want to say 1 shot and then 0. Those guys just carrying a lot of water. This is a game we can expect to stay closer. If I were to bet on this game, I would bet on the Warriors to win outright, I think. It's definitely a weakened team. Moda Center definitely very relevant as an environment. But they're just a better team. There's so many ways it can go wrong for the Trailblazers. I hope the Trailblazers win. But they were up, I want to say 17 in Game 2 was the biggest margin. They were up 15 at the half. I really wanted them to win that game because more games, more basketball, more DFS, more everything. I like that team. I like their chemistry. I like their plain pictures with, I think Dame was holding the picture of Nurkic. I love all that shit. If there's one thing I miss out of being able to much more rarely do athletics at my age is I love a good team. Rec league, doesn't matter. Love getting together with a group of guys, improving. Love a good team. It's like golf. I love playing golf. I hate playing golf by myself. I love a good scramble. There's full-blown cheats and there's other problems. It's obviously random as hell, but I just love working with the team. Like, okay, he should drive first because he hits longest, and then if he doesn't, he should go for the middle of the fairway, and he should do that, and he chips better, so we should, I like adding the strategy. It's just, I'm a team dude. Not that anyone cared about my preferences in team sports, but it's what happened to come to mind there. Let's see. So let's look at some other things here. But yeah, the Warriors, with Durant gone, not a team that disincentivizes you as much as many, many other teams for playing super small. So I do, again, I think ahead of the curve was like, if they're going to go small, Kanter is going to come off the court, they're going to play, and that was just really a matter of time. So, Now, exactly what version of this we see is very interesting. Meyers Leonard is, I don't know if he's worse than Enes Kanter defensively, but they're in that same class of getting them out on a guy who can dribble in space is, cover your eyes and coach kind of moment. Zach Collins is significantly better. Now, we finally saw something I've mentioned about a half dozen times in the postseason come to light in this last game, which is Zach Collins has real foul issues. And, picked up his 5 fouls in 8 minutes or whatever it was. But it's really important to note, and this seems to have largely escaped notice, Meyers Leonard came out before Zach Collins, or entered the game, rather, before Zach Collins, and played 5 minutes before Zach Collins went in. So in some of the dubiously composed advice I've seen around the internet, there was a lot of, I'm worried about playing Meyers Leonard again because, he came in because Zach Collins had foul trouble. No, that's not what happened. Now, he got more time because of that. But for whatever reason, Terry Stotts, and I tweeted some side-eye about this, said, hey, let's put Meyers Leonard out there, which, I don't know, I like Terry Stotts as a coach, but I'm scratching my head on that one still a little bit. So, I have Meyers Leonard for 12 minutes. I would probably rather play him than Damian Jones if they were the same price. I really don't want to play either of those guys. I would probably rather play Evan Turner than him, but if I'm sort of bargain basementing, I certainly don't think Zach Collins is out of play. Zach Collins is a very good fantasy basketball player. Now, you may be thinking, Eddie, he had negative fantasy points in the last game. Yeah, that's a good point. There is a very real floor there for Zach Collins, apropos or not apropos of his foul trouble. And the minutes could be anywhere between, again, outside of foul trouble, I think 15 is pretty likely a safe floor to guess at him, especially if you agree with me that Kanter's minutes are going to continue to be curtailed significantly. But there's a wide range of outcomes there. But he can make three-pointers, get block shots. He's less of a defensive liability. I do think the more likely players to benefit as this series goes longer of those excess pieces are Harkless and Turner, specifically, and Hood, assuming he remains healthy. Those are the guys, and Seth Curry. Those are the 4 guys I would expect to see continue to be on the come, as we like to say. Those guys, I think, do expect to see more time, and they're just going to play really, really small. And again, that should make you happy if you're trying to put Damian Jones in your life. Like, he's a big dude. That's a big, thick dude. He's bigger than Kevon Looney. He can do some real work down there. So, maybe get 17 fantasy points in 9 minutes out of him as he just, dunks on little dudes for large portions of the game. But again, they're starting him presumably against Kanter. I'm not shocked if Kanter doesn't start. I said it before the last game. I said at the beginning of the series, I actually have a side bet with somebody that Enes Kanter does not start a game due to a reason other than injury. I got an even money bet there, and I like it. I think the smartest thing to do absolutely is for him to come off the bench, and Steph comes out and he goes out there and does his stuff. He should play 19, 20 minutes is fine, but among them should be the 10, 12 minutes that Steph isn't playing. And the fact that they didn't do that, you're not covering up for your dude's biggest weakness. Let me look at a couple things and then address other players that we haven't necessarily discussed yet. And then, I'm curious, do we have an ownership update with Damian Jones in our life? That'd be kind of cute. I did NBA rankings today. I'm not sure I ranked Damian Jones. Again, I just talked about him for 10 or 15 minutes, so hopefully that will inform you what you need to know there. So let's see. No, we have not updated ownership. I'm curious where it'll come in. I'm going to guess you get something like, I'll say like 24% on DK and 12 or 13 on FanDuel. And I just don't want any part of that. There's a real chance he plays 7 minutes. There's a real chance he plays 10 minutes. You need him to drastically exceed what I think are reasonable expectations for minutes, and then be reasonably productive, certainly on FanDuel. On DK, you can make an argument. He's $1,000. If he's the best $1,000 dude, he allows me to play a lineup of Curry, Captain, Green, Thompson, McCollum, Looney, Jones, I think maybe like sort of fits, and it's the only way I can do it, and he's the best $1,000 guy. I don't consider it quite so wretched there. Who do you think would start over Canner? I assume Collins would start over Canner. You really, and now again, I'm assuming some common sense things that have not yet been in evidence out of Terry Stotts in this series, but you would want to start Zach Collins. And again, you don't have an issue if Zach Collins fouls out in 20 minutes. That's fine. Let him foul out in 20 minutes. But someone's got to eat up those minutes. And he's really the best guy on certainly the defensive end of the court. And at least, comparable with the various things that he can do relative to Cantor, spaces things a little bit better. Aminu, thoughts? I really don't want to go there simply because he looked great last game. Great. At the end of the first half, if you looked at the best possible lineup, it had Captain Al-Farouq Aminu in there. And then he still barely played in the second half. Like, if he can play that well in the first half of that game and still get shat on in the second half of that game, I really have trouble going back there. And again, the best plus-minus in that last game out of the starters was Al-Farouq Aminu and Enes Kanter. So, not impossible for me that Terry Stotts can read a box score and, realizes that of the starters, those guys were the most efficient. And again, they played far better in the first half, but they just didn't make shots in the second half. And it's unfortunate. I really was hoping they'd get that game. Let's talk about some other guys here. So yeah, I'm still staying with Steph at captain. I have no issue with Clay at captain, Draymond at captain, Lillard at captain. I guess that's about it. I am searching, and again, one of the things I hate about doing the solo shows is I miss things where there's comments right before the game. Can you look on FanDuel and tell you who your favorite 6K player would be? Sure, I'll take a second to do that. That's not too difficult. Again, I really hope to have 6.5 for Evan Turner, because I'm pretty sure he's going to be my favorite guy. But of the actual flat minimum, $6,000. And it's worth... Alright, so your possible candidates would be Jones, Leonard, Jerebko, Livingston, Cook, McKinney, Bogut, who, by the way, has a nice big green check mark on FanDuel, meaning that he's breathing? I don't know what that means. Anyway, just real quick bit of game theory. The basement guys on FanDuel are I generally don't want to play a 6K guy on FanDuel. Now, it will work out a significant portion of the time, not just because of the low number of integer scores we're actually dealing with here. Because we're just dealing with, 12 players who are going to score any appreciable amount of fantasy points, the best possible lineup will occasionally have on FanDuel guy A, guy, and this factor is actually multiplied by the fact they use multipliers where you're going to need guy 1, guy 2, guy 3. Okay, that's going to happen fairly frequently. That's going to leave you 2 spots left. And if those 2 spots left have $14,000 and someone does really well at 8K, then 8 and 6 are going to be the last 2 spots. And even if the guy who costs 6K scores 9 fantasy points, he will occasionally fit in there. So it is still not going to be that rare that you get 6K guy in the best possible FanDuel lineup. That being said, from any sort of raw point sensibility and the price of the guys near there, I'm not looking to roster 6K players if I can possibly avoid it. I like leaving $500 or $1,000 on the table, but rather than any of the 6K players, I would rather play Evan Turner at 65. I would rather play Al-Farouq Aminu at 7. I would rather play Zach Collins at 75. I would rather play Rodney Hood at 85. Again, we're getting a little out of range here. Jordan Bell at 8. I compare. Like, people ask about Kevon Looney. Kevon Looney's 10.5 now. He's 500 more than Cantor, who, if he plays comparable minutes, is generally going to be a better buy. He's 500 less than Iguodala. He's 2,000 less than Klay Thompson. So, these things are obviously very site-dependent, but 5,400 non-captain Kevon Looney on DraftKings is well more appealing to me, and I presume to everyone, than $10,500 Kevon Looney on FanDuel, Though it's important to understand that there is a difference between... there is merit to having some bad plays, just by the extent that they will be low owned, and if they're guys who carry a ceiling, you can spike $100,000 actually taking down a tournament all by yourself. So if no one in the world is going to want to pick a player who's badly priced, $10,500 Kevon Looney, and there is some 5% chance he scores 40 fantasy points and just goes the hell off, there's still merit to that play. So it really depends on, what your play style is. You okay just cashing, or do you want to take shots at the title? You want to take shots at the title, buying guys who are too expensive occasionally ends up being the net higher tournament play, even if it's going to be wrong the vast majority of the time. Can you play Turner and Hood on FanDuel to fit in studs? Yes, you can. I have no problem playing Turner or Hood. Slightly prefer Turner at his price. Actually, looking at that last game we saw towards the end of that game, I will pull it up. I have it here somewhere. But Turner played, I want to say, 15 of the last 16 minutes of the game. I still have him at 24 minutes. I don't think it's impossible he plays 28 or 29 minutes in this game. It's important to look at some of the foul trouble issues that were going on in that last game. I've had not one, not two, but three people say to me today, do you think Kevon Looney plays 30 minutes again? If he had started, I said I would have moved his projection from 24 to 28, and I thought that was possible. He obviously started the second half in that last game. But he got a lot of extra time because Draymond was in foul trouble. Not because they were just like, Kevon Looney got to play, all the Kevon Looney we can. Not a ton necessarily of extra time, but extra shifts that he normally would have come off were extended. So, I think 25-26 might be a little better than 24, the more I think about it with Jones being in there. But it's important to pay some attention to the foul trouble situations that were going on here. And another one is Moe Harkless, who had, I believe, 3 fouls in the first half. Ended up playing only 23 minutes. Now, he didn't close, and he had the fouls in the tank to close if they had wanted him to. He picked up 3 in the first half and none in the second half, and had 23 fantasy points in his 23 minutes. We played 30 minutes in game 1. I'm not shocked if they go back to him here. Meyers Leonard getting his 17 minutes screws everything up a little bit. But I would generally rather go with Zach Collins. Obviously, where Meyers Leonard is significantly cheaper, you can do it. Rodney Hood lost some time, went to the locker room with a knee injury again, had his 17 in 21 minutes. He's not on the injury report. I expect him to play 25, 26 minutes again. I am projected for 22, 23 fantasy points. He is the kind of player who projects a significant upside, plays a couple of positions. Seth Curry is obviously well too cheap for his money. From any raw point sensibility, I think you have to take Seth Curry over Evan Turner. I would generally rather play Evan Turner for what I'm hoping to be reasonably significantly lower ownership. I mentioned I'm having trouble going to Aminu. Nobody who's going to play even 15, 18, 20 minutes is out of play on a one-game slate. But, again, he was really, really good in the first half of that last game and barely touched the court in the second half. He started the third quarter, played 5 minutes, came back for 10 seconds? 13 seconds at the end of the third quarter, did not touch the court in the fourth quarter, ended with 19 minutes. I do not believe he scored in the second half. I know in that first 5-minute shift, he did not. So, that was, some people were very spicy, thought they were getting there, did not end up getting there. Let's look at some questions. You guys can ask stuff. I don't want to reiterate things I've said over and over again. Alright, so we'll bang out some questions for 10 minutes. Check some overlay, do the rest of that voodoo that we do so well. You guys playing Jones. I feel like we've talked about that one enough. Aminu thoughts. Again, I want to, and that's how I started on that whole thing. Who makes more sense at MVP, Dame or McCollum? For me, I would stick with Damian Lillard. The ownerships are going to be very, very similar. They've been within a few percentage of each other, both on FanDuel where he's $2,000 more, in DK where he's 16 or 18. I would slightly prefer to play Damian Lillard if I'm going to go there. In one lineup, I'm just going to play Steph as captain. I have him projected for 6 non-captain multiplier points more than anyone else in the game, especially on FanDuel. Your MVP, you generally want that guy. But the ownership is really significant. He's going to be 88, 89, 90, 91% owned again. He's going to be the captain in 30, 40% of lineups. For those reasons, it is appropriate and reasonable to go to McCollum, Lillard, Clay, Draymond. Any of those guys make sense for the chance that they get there. And more so on DK than FanDuel. It's worth pointing out on FanDuel where there isn't any extra money. It's just who do you want double the points. Your captaincy or MVP slot for Curry makes well more sense. But who makes more sense at MVP, Dame or McCollum? Dame. Not close. Like, it's just a raw points. He outscored McCollum both games so far. And again, he's also got to outscore Curry. So, and don't get me wrong, McCollum took more shots in game 2. Dame outscored him significantly, 14, 15 fantasy points, I think, because he got double-digit assists. McCollum didn't, but I've, Dame projected nearly 10 higher than McCollum for that reason. Like, it's just Dame on FanDuel pretty easily. DK, that's a more complicated question. Who do I think would start over Canner? I do think it would be Collins. Collins, thoughts? By the way, have we seen that lineup yet? I watched live the press game, the pregame presser with Terry. And Meyers Leonard will start ahead of Enes Kanter. Yeah, see, there you go. Okay, now that's a different ball of wax. I have, yep, there we go. I just want to bet. Yeah, Meyers Leonard starter. Meyers Leonard starting. Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. Collins is a better choice, but I'm not surprised by Meyers Leonard starting. So let's check it now. Meyers Leonard, I have a lot of interest in relative to Damian Jones. Meyers Leonard might play 25 minutes. Meyers Leonard, I'm a much bigger fan of playing Meyers Leonard. I'll just simply leave it at that. It's pretty concerning for Zach Collins at this point on DK, where they're about the same price. I probably will have to go to. I wasn't surprised they made a change. They asked Terry Stotts, and he said, "Well, if I was gone, I wouldn't tell you about it." I was like, "Okay," like, because there's at least some decent chance that if he was gonna, he turns around and says, "Oh, well then." Now I think they goosed his price a little bit. He is still the minimum on FanDuel. Yeah, they bumped him to 3,800 on DK, which is annoying but understandable. He's still fine at that number, and again, we're like 9 minutes before lock, so I don't think it'll be really interesting to see how that affects the ownership on, Damian Jones, etc. But I'm a pretty big fan of Meyers Leonard on both sides now. Do I think Leonard and Collins just split the 48 minutes? No. If they're smart, Enes Kanter will enter when Steph Curry checks out, because the reason you don't play him is because he's going to get wrecked by the guys who can efficiently run a pick and roll there, and without Steph there, you have less trouble with, Quinn Cook and Sean Livingston, and, Sean Livingston is good in that matchup because they're going super small, and Sean Livingston is, master of the mid-range jumper, will just shoot over some dudes. But yeah, I like Meyers Leonard quite a bit. He's a strong play on FanDuel at $6,000, and his ownership should not get out of control, so like him quite a bit on FanDuel. DK, they have priced him up a little bit, where he is actually more money than Evan Turner. He is more money than Zach Collins. He is more money than Seth Curry, and I mean that as far as his salary, not the fact that he's, money. But, yeah, that's those are all things that happened today. Do you like Seth Curry or Zach Collins with this news? I would still like Seth Curry a little bit more. Zach Collins has a real chance, he's coming off a bad game, and he has a chance of not getting on the court a ton now. Like you'd, I'm just tinkering around with prices here a little bit. Keep handling some questions. Thoughts on Aminu at 7K on FanDuel? At this point, I would much rather play Meyers Leonard, I'd have him projected for about the same minutes and the same fantasy points, just short of the same player. So you're saving $1,000, and I'm not sure with us getting that news only at whatever time that he's necessarily even higher owned. So I'm probably going to try to save that $1,000 and upgrade somewhere. But I think Amino is just fine to play in tournaments. This is a team that is obviously scrambling for answers. Amino looked really good in the time they gave him in the first half last night. Didn't do anything in a 5-minute shift in the third quarter, and that was it. He didn't play anymore. It's kind of a bad beat for him. I think he is fine at $7,000. I can certainly conceive of a world where he plays 30 minutes and scores 40 fantasy points. Or plays 24 minutes and scores 30 fantasy points, which certainly wouldn't kill you at $7,000. So I have no issue with you playing Amino. I can't advocate for him because it really seems like they've put a cap on his minutes. But obviously it's fine. Maybe it's better for Canner off the bench. It is better for Canner off the bench. It's not better than the fact that he's not going to get his bonus time. But Canner's too expensive from any raw points sensibility. And now that he's not starting, there's no chance the minutes come back, right? Like you could have before said, all right, I'm going to spend $10,000 on FanDuel or whatever the hell the number is on DK, $7,000 now. I think the minutes come back up. And by the way, Enes Kanter had the best plus-minus of all the starters on the team last game, for what it's worth. But I think the minutes are going to come back up. That was your rationale for playing him. Now you're like, I need him to score 40 in 20 minutes, which Enes Kanter can do. But he doesn't even get sort of Damian Jones bonus now. And so, yeah, bonus for Meyers Leonard. Love him on FanDuel. Like him on DK. Downgrade for Kanter. Downgrade for Collins. Probably downgrade for Aminu. Do I think Leonard can exceed 20 fantasy points now? I would probably have him projected for like 18, so I certainly think he can exceed 20. I still like Seth Curry. It doesn't really change much for me on that opinion there. Let's see if we're missing anything else. All sorts of weird centers starting tonight. Dame or Steph on FanDuel or both? Yes, I have no issue with... Like, I'm going to have Steph as my MVP the majority of the time. I still project him significantly higher. I don't have any issue whatsoever playing Dame instead of him. Your ownership will be well lower. He is a world-class player. The matchup is beatable, although a very tough one. And if not now, when? Any takes on the Friday-Saturday slate on DK? I will not try to conjure those up in 2.5 minutes, though I appreciate the question. Dre or Lillard raw fantasy points? I have Lillard for about 4 more fantasy points than Dre. I like Dre quite a bit. I have Dre and Clay almost exactly the same. Do I think leaving 1K on the DK showdown is too much today? No. I don't think that's too much. That's about the line where I think, like, that's fine. The uniqueness you get out of it is worth the, in theory, slightly less. Clay or CJ, I have Clay a few points higher. But I like CJ just fine, and salary-wise, they're obviously comparable there. Nice discount for Clay on FanDuel, so I pretty significantly prefer Clay. 90 seconds, everybody, 90 seconds. But we got some news. We got some actionable news. It's exciting. It's compelling and rich. No overlay to speak of on DraftKings. I will take a look on FanDuel for you. Really, I'm really interested to see the ownership on these guys now. News turned me on. Yeah, I'm not too messant, but at a level of heightened awareness. Sorry, just checking news, lots of places, making sure there are no other changes. I would have been surprised if there were, but definitely something we wanted to keep an eye on. We are coming down to it, friends. Coming down the wire. Does our horse have a rider? Very topical. Preakness style, baby. Alright. Counting it down. Yeah, and you want, I mean... Yeah, that's good news for Clay and Steph, though. Also, having Meyers Leonard starting, that's That is not going to inhibit your scoring rather. That's gonna work out okay. Meyers Leonard's wife, by the way, excellent at basketball. If you haven't seen her on Twitter, very strong. All right, let us see what we have for some ownerships. I'm really excited about this. I'm tempted. Before we look, let's make some guesses on guys here. So we'll just do Meyers Leonard and Damian Jones. I will say FanDuel, you get news broke like 13 minutes before lock. I'll go 15% Meyers Leonard and 11% Damian Jones. And on DK, I'll go the sixth player. I'll go 19% Meyers Leonard, 14% Damian Jones. Okay, FanDuel live scoring. $350,000 Saturday NBA shot. Clicking on lineups. Jordan Bell 10%. Meyers Leonard 13.7%. Okay, I said 15. That feels pretty good. And I'm hoping, for our sakes, we get as much Damian Jones as I was hoping. Haven't seen one yet, though. Enes Kanter, 24%. I love news. News makes money. People are like, God, I hate that late-breaking news. I love late-breaking news because generally I, and hopefully collectively, we are less stupid than most people. 24% there. Kevon Looney, 18% on FanDuel at 10,500. I don't know, man. I haven't found a Damian Jones yet, though, so maybe I underestimated the public when it comes to that one. More Kevon Looney. More Moe Harkless, who is fine at his price. 15% Iggy. Gotta like that. 15 is nice. Can I get some Damian Jones in my life? Just want some Mr. Jones. And me, staring at the video. Seth Curry, 19% at $9,000. Apparently I just underestimated the world knowing that he was going to play like 5 minutes. And knowing all this, me acting like I know everything, Meyers Leonard's going to play 5 minutes. Damian Jones is going to play 20, because that's just how that shit goes sometimes. Anyone? Jonas Jerebko, I found one, 9%. Again, 10% Jordan Bell. Gonna give up in a couple more screens. Somebody own Damian Jones. Man, players hating. But all the Enes Kanter and 14% Meyers Leonard, I wish I was playing FanDuel tonight, I'll put it that way. I would feel advantaged. People have paid the rake for you. If anyone's got the FanDuel 350k shot, Damian... There, I found it! 5.3%. Okay, so people were not nearly as bad there. So I was right on Meyers Leonard. Damian Jones not as highly owned as we thought they would be. DK 450k best of the West. Meyers Leonard 10%. Damian Jones 10%. Amusingly enough, Meyers Leonard 10.1. Damian Jones 10. Now, Damian Jones is $1,000. Meyers Leonard is $3,800. That is different than FanDuel. It was ridiculous. All right, here we go. What do we got? Steph 87%. That's down a percent or two. I think he was in the 88, 89s last couple. Yeah, about the same there. Lillard up to 84.4%. All right, people are buying into home Lillard. McCollum 70. Draymond 70. Clay 44. I'm pretty excited about that. You people are underestimating guaranteed to take 20 whatever shots Clay. Seth Curry 43. Moe Harkless 27. Kevon Looney 25. Enes Kanter 24 on both sides. I don't know. At the start of the day, I wanted none at his price, and now he's not starting. Jonas Jerebko 17, Rodney Hood 16, Zach Collins 15, Jordan Bell 15, Al-Farouq Aminu 12.5, Andre Iguodala 12.2, Meyers Leonard 10, Damian Jones 10, Evan Turner 7.7. I'd want more than that. That's a very nice price. Quinn Cook 2.4, Alfonso McKinney 2.3, Bogut 2%. May not play. I think probably I'd go under 50% to play. Sean Livingston 2%, Damian Lee 0.3, Jake Layman 0.15, Marcus Derrickson 0.03, Scalabissier 0.2, DeMarcus Cousins 0.01. Congratulations, you played yourself. Last check for questions. Clay is 4% captain on DK. Yeah, that's craziness. Craziness. It's Klay Thompson with no Kevin Durant or DeMarcus Cousins. Going to take 20 plus whatever shots against a team that has largely given up on playing defense on a one-game slate. 4% ownership for captain, where you have to pay the extra salary. That's absolute craziness. Mike Gallagher, my estimable colleague from RotoWire.com, apparently tweeted, Damon CJ with Myers in the season, minus 11.6 net rating in 202 minutes. Same scenario in playoffs, 20.3 net rating in 40 minutes. This is... that's a small enough sample size that should immediately set off alarm bells. Also, now you're dealing with he's always coming off the bench. You're going against second units. So when Dame and CJ are out there together against second units, it's going to be a little better in general. But 40 minutes is not doing a whole lot for me. But good to know. But yeah, news is great. I will be honest with you. If there was never any late news, I don't think any player in the world can beat basketball. Long term, over a million years, a million contests, it'd be close, maybe, but you could count them on a hand. Like, you tell me Osmo could still get there, maybe, but reacting intelligently to news and reacting efficiently to news, again, intelligently being, oh, this is what's happening. I know that Damian Jones is not all that in a bag of chips, and efficiently being able to actually execute those strategies when news breaks 2, 6, 8, 13 minutes before lock. I think without late breaking news, basketball would be nearly unbeatable at that point. Yeah, I mean, it's not Jones chalk, but the FanDuel, I mean, and for that reason on FanDuel, he's a third owned Meyers Leonard, which he should be. So that was generally well done by the ownership. Seth Curry is very chalky, and he's too cheap on DK. FanDuel, Seth Curry is still, I think, $9,000. That doesn't, that's not exciting for me. He's fine. He's going to play 20 to 28 minutes. Doesn't do a lot else but score, but can pick out. He had 4 steals in that last game. Nearly had a 5th. He's fine there. DK, $3,000 for Seth Curry, but that's too cheap. Now, he has a very real floor, and obviously some other pretty interesting value has opened up, so I probably would rather have less than 50% Seth Curry, but he's appropriately priced. You only use Jones on DK to fit in the big 3 Warriors with Lillard and Seth. Yeah, that's how that can work for you. You play Jones, Seth Curry, and you can play Captain Steph, Clay, Draymond, Damian Lillard. That's just fine. So, all right, there we are, everybody. I'll be on, I think, 6:15 tomorrow for, I believe there's only the one game at 7 p.m., breaking our trend of 8:30 in the East and 9 o'clock in the West. So, with that, I hope you enjoy the double the rake paid by people playing Enes Kanter and not following the late news. I hope all your horses keep their riders and cross the finish line. Best of luck and bon chance.